should QB1 be Payton Thorne's to lose? Let's talk about it. In Hugh Freeze's first season, he went to the portal looking for a solution at QB. The solution? Payton Thorne. Thorne started for 2 years at Michigan State and threw for 3,200 yards in his first year as Michigan State starter. 3,200 yards would be absolutely earth-shattering numbers for an Auburn QB. In his second season, he took a step back but found a way to pass for more than 2,600 yards in his second year as a starter. 2,600 yards is not amazing, but still pretty impressive considering Auburn has only produced 2 3,000-yard passers in the whole history of the program. So fast forward another year and Payton Thorne is on the Plains. Year 1 saw Payton throw for 1,755 yards, a huge step back. Now, depending on who you ask, some of that was the receiver's fault, or it was his fault, or it was Philip Montgomery's fault, or Hugh Freeze's fault. The truth? The entire passing game was a mess last year, and that's on everybody. Hugh Freeze will be expecting more production from the QB position next year, which means the part of that that's within Payton's control, he'll have to improve quickly. Now, if you're an Auburn fan, you probably remember the recent Music City Bowl. Auburn went up to Nashville and came back with an embarrassing L. However, Auburn fans got a surprise they probably didn't expect when baby goat Hank Brown entered the chat and looked pretty good for a guy taking his first college snaps in a real game. Brown's performance sparked an offseason debate that is likely to rage well into fall camp, which is who should be favored to win QB1. Early reports from spring camp say that Brown and Thorne are the early leaders in the clubhouse. Now, when asked about QB during his first press conference of spring camp, Hugh Freeze had this to say.
I think Payton has done an incredible job since January of taking the leadership role and setting the standard. Do I think it's his to lose? Yes. But he's got to go earn it every day.
So it seems, at least at this point, in Hugh Freeze's mind, the job is Payton Thorne's to lose. But in Hugh's own words, Payton has to still go out and earn it. I think I speak for most of the fan base when I say most of us will be on pins and needles waiting to see how that plays out. Auburn has 15 practices this spring to try to figure out who QB1 will be. So should it be Thorne's job to lose? Let us know in the comments after the video what you think about QB1 being Payton Thorne's job to lose. And if the guy you want to win doesn't, visit the Opelika Rage Room to get your frustration out over who wins the QB1 job. We appreciate the Opelika Rage Room for sponsoring this segment, and you should too. I'm here with assistant coach Stephen Burrell to talk a little bit about Auburn basketball and where things stand right now. Stephen, let's jump right in here. You're in your 10th season at Auburn. This team makeup seems a little different from teams that you guys have had in the past. You know, what makes this team unique from even maybe that Final Four team in 2019?
So the biggest thing that, obviously makes them a little different is that our depth is a little different than teams in the past. And we've always shortened our rotation.
Depth, that's saying a lot.
Yeah, because we always go into the year with 10 or 11 guys, but this year it's kind of stayed at 10 or 11 guys that have been in the rotation all year long. So, just because we've had 2, if not 2.5 guys in every position that have been able to go out and produce night in and night out. This is an older team.
Yeah,
I think we've been able to keep some guys on the roster, but also bring in some transfers that have a lot of college basketball experience. So it's different than the Final Four team because, it's come out of the transfer portal, whereas that team had a lot of guys that have been here for multiple years.
Yeah.
It's as old as that team. And I think some of the things that we do offensively are similar, maybe a little better defensively than that team. But there's some similarities there. But I think the biggest difference between teams in the past is just our depth and our ability to use our depth.
Having an older team, that's not so bad. Last year, you guys got knocked out of the tournament by just that, right? Like an older team.
Yeah.
You had Jabari, who was super talented, but that Miami squad was senior laden, right? Do you feel like maybe you can give the tournament back a little bit of that energy this year?
Yeah, man. So you look at, last 2 years, kind of ran into a buzzsaw with Miami 2 years ago, and then Houston last year. Two of the more veteran, older teams in the country. Obviously, the difference is, those older teams all had NCAA tournament experience.
Yeah.
This team, Jalen Williams has been to the tournament, Janai has been to the tournament, a couple of guys have been to the tournament, but some of these new guys, some of our transfers have not necessarily been in that environment yet. So it's going to obviously be a little different for them as well. So, but hopefully, obviously playing in the SEC, we at this point, I think we've played like 8 out of the last 10 have been against quad 1 opponents.
Yeah.
We've got a taste of what the tournament could feel like. But once you get in those bright lights of an NCAA tournament game, it's always a little different.
Let's talk about the transfers. Chad Baker-Mazara had the game of his life a couple of games ago. You've got Chaney Johnson and Denver Jones as well, who have joined this team, and they've had a huge impact. But Chaney has just recently gotten a chance to increase his role with Jalen Williams being out for a couple of games. Can you talk about how maybe that experience could have been a blessing in disguise for you to allow Chaney to step up? And then Jalen's back a couple of games later.
Yeah. I mean, we'll start with Chaney. This summer, Chaney was beating Jalen out all summer.
Yeah.
Honestly, just playing better, working a little bit harder. He was in a different spot. We knew that once the year came around that Jalen would obviously be who he normally is. We show up when the lights turn on, because that's how he always is. But we always had ultimate confidence in Chaney. If we ever did need him to step up and play a bigger role to do so. And then you saw Georgia, he did just that. Came in. He got a little bit of early foul trouble, but I think he scored like 14 or 15 points on the road in a tough environment.
Wow.
It was able to help us win the game. So we have ultimate confidence in Chaney, but you're right. That could have been a blessing in disguise for him. So next time Jay Will does get in some foul trouble, he's going to be able to come in and obviously perform. So we have ultimate confidence in him. Go to Chad Baker. We knew coming out of the portal from multiple that position that either gamer and a guy that could just go get a bucket. And you saw the Georgia game, being able to score 25 points. And he's shown that in a lot of games this year, just his ability to be our best guy with the ball in his hand, making decisions, making shots, and doing a lot of things that, just look really easy to him, right? So he's a guy that we've relied heavily on here recently, and, need him to stay consistent and obviously play at a high level for us to be successful. And then Denver Jones, coming to FIU as a 20-point-a-game scorer last year, has come this year and had to play a different role, not getting as many shots, probably averaging a little under 10 points a game, having to guard the best player night in and night out on the team's roster. So he's done an unbelievable job accepting that role and helping this team have as much success so far this year.
Stephen, let's move on to the next young talented freshman. Every year, it seems you guys are getting one and dones. And I've commented to our listeners about how difficult it is to lose your best player every year. This might be the first year your incoming guy isn't your best player, but he is still super talented in Aiden Holloway.
Yep.
He's in a little bit of a shooting slump right now. Can you talk about how you coach a guy through that? Bruce Pearl seems to still have a lot of confidence in him shooting the ball.
Yeah, I mean, we all do. Every time Aiden shoots the ball, we think it's going in.
Yeah.
And I think the best way for kids to get out of slumps is to have that confidence from their coaching staff and from their teammates to know that, we're not going to second guess him when he shoots a shot, or if he misses a shot, he's coming out. Like, we've shown that that's not how we roll.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we need Aiden to do night in and night out is still continue to help us get into our stuff. Obviously, continue to defend and play at a really, really high level. But I think the best way to help get him through his slump is to show confidence. And I think going into the Georgia game, inserting him back into the starting lineup gave him a little bit of a boost mentally, because he realized that, his head coach and the rest of the staff and the rest of his team had confidence in him. And he went out there and made 5 threes. And then you look at the Tennessee game, it's a huge 3 late in the game to kind of cut it to 4 to 2. So I feel good about where Aiden's at right now mentally. I think, obviously we're going to need him to make shots down the stretch, because at the end of the day, guards making shots and tournament play are going to be really important as far as the success of our team, because we have a lot of guys obviously down low with Jalen and Janai and Chaney that can go in there and get buckets, and Dylan bringing us a spark on both ends of the floor. But our guards, our biggest X factor on the road and in games with loss is that we haven't made shots. So, Aiden's ability to make shots is going to be really crucial.
Going back to that senior leadership, Janai Broome is having an incredible season. He has really come along as a player. He's added the 3-point shot to his game. And maybe fans would have cringed last year, but it feels like every time he shoots it, people think it's going in as well, too. Can you talk about how big that is for him to add that facet to his game?
it's huge. Last year he finished the season a little bit better than he started the season from three. He was making threes a little more consistently late in the year, so we knew that he had that part in his game. That's why he came to Auburn. He wanted to come to Auburn to show that he was able to stretch the floor and shoot.
Is that the same thing that, like, we saw Walker Kessler do this the year before as well, too? Is that just something that the player picks up on their own, or are you guys coaching like, hey, in today's game, if you add the three, you'll be more versatile at the next level?
No doubt. I mean, at the next level, it's a lot of 5 out. You see a lot of centers that are capable of making threes in the NBA. Walker's case is different. In high school, he was a guard, basically. He was a 7-foot guard.
Yeah.
Shoot it, put it on the floor, do all. So we knew that was there in his game. But he also was the best defender in the entire country. So Walker was allowed to shoot as many threes as he wanted because he blocked 8 shots a game. He earned that ability because of the time spent in the gym and everything else he was doing on both ends of the floor for us. Same thing for Janai. Janai works on his game nonstop. He's always working on his 3-ball. We saw it last summer when he went to the G League Combine and the NBA Combine. He made a bunch of open threes in those games, and it obviously got the awareness of scouts up. And, he came in the summer once he decided to come back and really made that a point to be a big part of his game. And even seeing SEC play, at one point, I think before the Kentucky game, he had the second best percentage in the SEC for the year. And then he goes out there and he's shown, against South Carolina, Georgia, and then obviously on the road to Tennessee, he's able to make big shots and open shots. And it's been huge for his confidence in his game because people now have to respect him on the perimeter, which makes the inside game even more dominant, just like he's shown all year long. I think from guys that we've had at Auburn, Janai's probably the best interior scorer that we've coached here in 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, just his ability to post up on the block. He's obviously got a really unbelievable left hand, but his ability to use his size and get angles on different defenders and use shot fakes, he scores it around the rim as good as anyone we've had here since we've been.
Stephen, we talk a lot of positive things about this team. Obviously, you're having a great season, and Auburn looks to be maybe a 3 or 2 seed when it's all said and done, depending on how you do in the tournament. But talk about the things that you feel like you need to fix going into the end of the season here. At this point, there's a belief that teams kind of are what they are at this point. How does Auburn basketball eliminate the things that maybe got you bounced from the tournament last year?
I think the biggest thing for us is limiting our turnovers and making shots.
Yeah.
You look at a lot of our losses. A lot of our losses have come because we just didn't make open shots. In a lot of the games that we've had really large margins is when we make shots. So we've been a little more consistent offensively, I think, towards the end of the year in making shots. We had a couple, hiccups at Florida. But I mean, against Tennessee, I thought we played really well offensively. 20 turnovers, though. We had 15 turnovers on the road. And you look at games where we struggled, I think, turnovers have been a big part of that. So if we decide, the Final Four team made a huge run because they made shots and we had one of the lowest turnover percentages in the tournament that year.
True.
So those are the two biggest things that I think for this team, I think be really important moving forward. If we limit our turnovers, no live ball turnovers, because that leads to transition on the other end. And it takes away possessions from you on the offensive end. So limiting those turnovers, making open shots, this team does a pretty good job of being consistent defensively, so we have to continue to do that and let that carry us. But if we limit our turnovers and make shots, we got a chance to beat anybody.
In closing here, give me a soundbite. Is this a Final Four team?
I mean, it's tough to say because, obviously there's so much parity in college basketball.
Sure.
I think if we do have that recipe of guarding, making shots, and limiting turnovers, you've seen the games that we've done those,
Yeah.
We beat them by 40. We beat Alabama by 20. We beat Ole Miss by, 30 in our ability. We beat them on the road by a good margin. You see in the games where we do those things, our ability. You see the games where we don't do those things, what could happen. So, the Final Four team, they should have lost in the first round in New Mexico State. Just being very honest about it. The next 3 games,
looked unstoppable. Yeah.
Made shots and we made it to the Final Four. So I think if this team does the things that are important for us to be successful and win, I think the sky's the limit.
Well, that year you beat the 3 winningest programs in college basketball history.
Yeah.
This year, I think Auburn fans are going to be hoping that you can pull something similar off. I know we'll be on pins and needles watching. I want to thank Stephen Pearl for joining me to talk a little bit about the state of Auburn basketball going into the end of the season.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you.
That's it for another great edition of The Mix with my guy, Stephen Pearl. If you want more content like this, please hit like and subscribe. We are The War Report on every social media platform. TW Report on TikTok. We're signing off, and as always, War Eagle.
I'm here with Ceasear Walker. We're talking quarterback. It's The Mix. We're back again. Ceasear, last time we sat here, we talked about receiver and how great Cam Coleman is going to be. Mm-hmm. Cam's not going to be great on his own. He's got to have somebody throw him the ball. So
Yes.
Hugh Freeze, in his opening spring presser, said that it's Payton Thorne's job to lose. And I wanted to get to that. Now, we talked about this, I think it was on the weekend tailgate. Maybe it was on the midweek report.
It was weekend tailgate.
The comments weren't favorable to Mr. Freeze, saying that it was Payton Thorne's job to lose. What did you feel when Hugh Freeze said? How did Freeze's words make you feel?
Tell me how to feel, Hugh. It didn't surprise me. It didn't surprise me because I wanted to see if what he said coming out of the bowl game was an emotional response to what he saw, or was it truly an indication of how things were going to go. And that's not to say that any of the other guys can't win the job.
Sure.
But I think it goes to show that when it comes to Hugh Freeze, at the very least, it's true of many coaches, but experience is going to put you in the driver's seat more times often than not. And it's going to have to take another guy to truly outperform Payton Thorne in order to take the job from him.
Yeah, I mean, I've been racking my brain trying to figure out how someone overcomes Thorne's experience. You just don't wake up one day with 3 years of starting experience on this level, right?
You're right.
Hank Brown barely has 3 downs.
Right.
Holden Garrett doesn't have 3 quarters.
Right.
What can these guys legitimately show in practice that would make their coach feel comfortable? That, hey, look, you won the job in spring camp. What does that look like for Hank Brown, for example? He was QB4 at one point.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to take what happened in the bowl game and reproduce that in just about every time they come.
The future. Like,
yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Like what created a bit of a controversy in fans' eyes was on one hand, Payton Thorne not wowing you. Right. And then in 2 possessions, just light it up.
Yeah.
Right. In other words, you have to take care of what you can take care of. And to me, I think that's what, in my opinion, hurt Holden, right?
Yeah.
You can't show what you can do if you're not on the field. But when you're on the field, there's no excuses.
Is this a fair QB race? Is this going to be a fair QB race? Was it a fair QB race last year?
No, it was not I mean, to me, QB race implies that it was other people had a shot. I don't think those other guys truly had a shot. They weren't recruited by Hugh Freeze.
He
number
played
one.
Robbie a fair amount.
Yeah, but it was in a package.
Okay.
Robbie Ashford had a package,
Okay.
right? So I don't think Robbie wanted to be the guy, right? Holden wants to be the guy.
Yeah.
Payton wants to be the guy. So you're asking, is it a fair competition? Last year it wasn't.
Okay.
And I think going into this spring, you're skeptical at the very least based on what has happened already.
Let me take you back. Well, let me state how I felt when I heard Freeze's words.
Okay.
I went back to that feeling that this might not be a competition. And at the very least, they're going to start the season with Payton Thorne. Look, if he's the best guy, he's the best guy. There are a couple scenarios that I want to talk about where that's either a good thing or a bad thing, right? In the good scenario, Payton Thorne has overcome whatever handicap mentally that he had. Because I believe he can make the throws. We saw he's decent with his legs. He's got a game that can be dangerous if it isn't inconsistent. But whatever's going on between the ears for him, if he doesn't overcome that and he produces the same play, the bad scenario for me is that it takes Freeze too long to figure that out and go to the backup. So let's say Payton Thorne is the front runner and the other guys can't overcome that.
Okay.
What do you have to show your coach this spring to make him pull the plug on him before SEC play? Now, they play Arkansas game 4. I believe they open with Alabama A&M. You got Cal that's coming here, and then it's New Mexico. Then you got Arkansas game 4 to open SEC play. What do you got to do to say, Coach, it's my time?
If I'm Hank Brown or Holden Garrett, here's my job. I close the gap as much as I can in spring.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to. Obviously, if you can win the job, great. You want to whatever gap Hugh Freeze has placed between you and Payton Thorne, Your job is to close that gap as much as you can,
Right.
Because you got summer and you got fall camp to get even closer.
Yeah.
By the time the season starts, if Payton Thorne is the guy, if he's crowned the guy, you want Hugh Freeze to know that if things don't go well, you have another option.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel that.
That's really the goal that these guys have. You can't leave spring with the same gap as you had going into it. You failed.
You failed. Yeah.
You failed pretty much, right?
It'll be interesting to see where they go with this. I think, if you're on last week's episode of The Mix, we had Walker White on. Walker said he had a coach tell him, you're either accurate or you're not. And then something clicked in his head, and he said, wait, that's bullshit. I can be whatever I practice to be or whatever I work to be. And so he started working on his accuracy. He said he's going to be working on it his entire career, but you can be whatever you practice to be. I think the hope for fans is that all those guys are practicing to be better than what they were last year, to give Freeze as many options as he can to make sure that when push comes to shove, he's choosing the right quarterback.
That's our job. That's the job of a fan.
Yeah.
It's to hope for the best of these athletes, that they're doing what they're supposed to do when the coaches aren't around, as well as when the coaches are around. Yeah. Right? They're improving themselves. They're getting stronger, faster, more accurate, whatever the case may be. What you hope happens, and really and truly, this is what I want to see for a competition.
Okay.
Because whoever wins, they need to, at the very least, have the fear of God put in them.
Yeah,
that
sure.
My job wasn't necessarily a lock. Like, this other dude over here or these dudes over here were a threat, a real threat. Yeah. And what I want to see out of a Hank Brown or a Holden Garner is you need to put the fear in Payton Thorne that, hey, even though I am a 3-year starter, this job wasn't exactly mine's per se. It was mine's to lose. Like, I could have lost it. So that's their goal. That's their job.
Yeah. Well, our goal is going to be to watch on Pins and Needles and bring you guys more coverage about what Auburn's quarterback race is going to be. I want to thank Ceasear Walker for joining me for this episode of The Mix. War Eagle.